Damn, I've been fighting with this blasted camera. It's got a mind of its own at times. Anyway, I can just annoy you with this view a minute. Yeah, sorry about that. Sam here, Reloved Guitars, and just wanted to welcome you to quite a humid day in the UK. Even though it's September, we've got this strange weather that's a bit warm and sticky. Anyway, what we have on the bench today is Malcolm's Avon, and this is a beautiful old Les Paul copy from the 70s, and I think Malcolm's had this from new, so it's a very much treasured old guitar. That's really interesting. This is the second one that's come with the pickup surrounds reversed. I think that is the wrong way around. Yep, but maybe it's part of it is to get the tone different. Maybe there's some choice going on there. A, to raise up the poles of the pickup, get it right up under the strings, and B, well, to reverse it to be able to do that. And also maybe to take away some of the trebliness of the tone. So that's an interesting choice. We're going to obviously change that because excuse me, let's throw some bits on the floor. That will help start the day. We've got some IronGear things. We've got a blues engine and a dirty torque to go into this creature. Okay, so, and we have a few little electric bits and pieces there, but that's a way off yet because this guitar is going to become an AristoCat guitar, which means most of it's going to get replaced. Apart from the neck, the body, and maybe the knobs and the stop piece. Everything else, pickups, tuners, frets. Ooh. Okay, well we have a part that doesn't work here anyway. Oh. So here we have the Avon, and I had one of these before which I did up and it was great, a really nice guitar. But the thing that's really important about this is whether or not the truss rod works. If it doesn't, it tends to be more trouble than it's worth. Obviously this is there are those who like the tone of these things. I don't think they're real humbuckers anyway. They tend to be single coils in a big empty tin, but they fairly flimsy in terms of output, which is I think why they're so high up against the strings here to kind of compete with modern guitars. But they're not a bad tone. I mean, it's a sort of, well, it's a kind of single coil tone. Not that noisy even, which is quite good, but I do have it on a fairly kind of restrained setting. But yeah, low output. I know Malcolm, when we played together in a band, Malcolm's used this to do a kind of Rolling Stones type of tone, tuned to open G, I think it was, and it sounded pretty good actually. But anyway, so kind of without too much to do, we're going to need to take this thing apart. And most of what we've got here is, as I say, going to disappear. So the process will be take it all apart, clean up all the components that we're going to keep, check all these out. The neck's going to be the hard work, if you like. And before I take the strings off, what I'm going to do is check the truss rod operation. And if it's working okay, then we'll sort of proceed and I'll de-fret it, clean out the slots and get ready to, or cut a new set of frets and get ready to install those. And because it's a bolt-on neck, it's quite a bit easier to do that in a controlled fashion with the press, as opposed to if it's a glued neck, it just gets a little bit harder, but a little bit more complex to do it with the with a jig, if you like. So we've got some decent Cluson copies here, but they don't really suit the kind of overall finished style this is going to have. So we'll probably replace those. We'll also replace the bridge, but we'll keep the style of the mounting poles or posts. The bridge tends to be only suited for these quite narrow gauge tuners. So what happens is when we put a different, sorry, pickups, when we put better quality pickups in, that we need a wider spread on the bridge, which these originals tend not to have, so that's probably going to need a replacement. Nothing wrong with this, it's an original feature, so we'll keep that in as well. It's quite a nice looking thing. Yeah, so and then we rewire the whole thing as well, put in some decent pots, new pots and caps, but also keep the original, I don't know if you can see this, keep the original labelling on here, because it's quite cool, these stickers, and if we're careful we can keep those, and we'll also shield it throughout, so it's got as little buzz as possible. So the idea will be that Malcolm can get that back into playing operation. That's the aim of it. Okay, so there's no time like the present to get stuck in. Got loads on this week, so it's going to be a busy week. One of the things that I'm also suffering from is a lack of parts boxes, so I need to free up some space to put all Malcolm's bits in. And I suspect it might have to go and live in a pot over here, which is fine. Let's put those on there. So I'm going to put Malcolm's stuff into a drawer here that's ready. So if I kind of was hoping to maybe show you some close-up of this, I'll try and do it while still attached to the power supply. So hold on, round the back, round the front. The reason being is that it's quite an interesting guitar to look at in terms of original components and wear. So like I said, what you can see down here is that's reversed. The pickup housing has been reversed. And the only thing I can think reason for it is to bring these poles as close as humanly possible to the strings, which might be what you do if you are struggling to get any sort of power out of it. But we'll obviously change that as well when we put new pickups in. We won't need to raise them quite so far, but there is quite a big gap here in the construction of this guitar. And we've got this kind of Gibson-esque bridge, so well, it's not got rounded posts, but it doesn't have the screw type, so we have to get the action pretty much spot on before we tighten everything up, otherwise it becomes difficult to do. I know I don't have it, but there is a little tool for lifting the bridge while you turn the thumb screws, but we just have to improvise. We have signs of where there was a screw for the, in both cases, for the pick guard, which we're not going to have. Coming up to the neck, binding all the way up, you can actually see, I don't know if you can see, but there's a sort of an orange peel finish up here. It looks like a three-piece headstock, which is quite Gibson-esque as well. It's got the chromed plastic Avon Rose Morris logo pinned to the top, which is quite a cool little addition. But yeah, it's orange peel finish up here, which is quite interesting. It's quite a basic finish. It's not been grain filled, or it's just been probably primered and then lacquered straight on top. Then we go to a plastic, horrible plastic nut, which never would have been much good. We've then got very, very flat frets with wear in them as well. I don't know how close we can see, but they're almost non-existent down here. Right down the centre there to about here, they are completely almost flat with the fingerboard. And then within that, hey Morris, on top of that we've also got sort of shrinkage of the inlays, which I don't want to replace particularly, but we'll have to see what happens to them when we re-radius the neck. You never know, we may have no choice. Quite a lot of scarring on there. It's been in the wars over the years, some file marks and stuff, but you know, it's going to benefit from a refresh, and it looks reasonably thick, so it should withstand that. We need to fill these holes and strengthen them up. things like that. Which is gone again. And then within that, we're gonna, let's take the cover off and see what the original sounds like a wasp in here. Let's look at what the original electrics and stuff look like in here. That's why the cats ran away. You heard somebody coming through the gate from the field. I don't know who that is. It's a neighbour's kid, I think. Okay, so I think I'm going to need a smaller pot. Well, that one's spinning, so it's not going to bite any. It's not biting the wood, so that's not so great. When you take one of these things apart, it's then you start to really see all the bits that are worn out, like the screws that won't come out unless you sort of help them. Ooh, big hole full of nothing really. Well, full of the switch, but we'll replace that as well. It's interesting, once you get inside these old plywood guitars, you really do get to see the sort of horror of the construction. Now, I think the whole thing about tone woods is a little bit overblown personally. It's just an opinion. I've played loads of plywood guitars that were fun to play and felt great and produced a really nice sound. So for some quite simple mechanical reasons, I don't have a problem with plywood or ply construction, particularly because, you know, the most if not all of the tone, I should say, on the electric guitar comes from the pickups, the magnetic interaction with the strings and the magnets. So I think people can get a bit too over the top about, ooh, that's fantastic. That is, I don't even know what that is. I don't know what it is. It's not even cardboard or something. A piece of brown paper stuck over plastic. I don't know. Anyway, let's show you what we got in here. So in here we have a grubby little hole, and you can see that the ply is not very strong when it comes to holding in screws. So, and they're always right close to the edge, which is a bit dozy really. You've got all that room. Most of them go right on the edge and then snap, so we'll need to build those up a little bit to hold the next lot. Yeah, 2 volumes, 2 tones, but you can see the construction in there, shaggy, and it's in fact the cavity goes all the way from the back laminate layer or ply or whatever this would be, right the way through to the front top, which is slightly curved, so it's shaped. This piece here is shaped to give it its sort of Gibson-esque-ish look on the other side. So, you know, truly horrible in all kinds of ways, but and not much room even to manoeuvre. So we need mini pots for this baby. As you can see, we're not going to get full-size pots in there any day of the week. But basically, we're going to need to do all of this from scratch. The switch appears to be already broken, so something isn't working with it. So it makes sense that we're going to take that one out as well. So really, it looks really extreme, but at this point, we might as well just take our clippers to almost everything, and really it is strip this down to absolutely nothing. But like I said, before I do that, before I start taking too much out, I do want to check the truss rod function, or lack of, and I'm hoping that isn't the case. When I put the camera on in here this morning, the camera started to steam up on the inside of the LCD panel, and the only time I've seen it do that was when we were on honeymoon in the Maldives a couple of months ago. So it's telling me that it's pretty humid out here. You can feel it anyway, which also is a bit of an annoying thing for me, because I've got a few things I need to schedule some spray painting on, and we've now entered a sort of part of the season or whatever where it's just going to be almost impossible to do. Okay, so while we're here, let me just check what we have in terms of neck relief. Okay, so I don't need to measure it, but there is some. And then the next bit now is, let's see what happens if I crank the truss rod. Well, first of all, let's even see if it moves. Let's get the right one for this era of guitar. Right. Okay, well, okay, well, it's already loose. So for the guitars, for the gauge of strings that Malcolm has on here, it's got enough relief, and I think that's an important consideration to keep in mind. Let me just check the gauge of these strings as close as I can. So it looks like it's ending up in a 52 at the far end. So I'll just jot that somewhere for a minute. I'm not sure if we've got two B strings going on here. I don't know if that was intentional for playing open tunings or some such. I could be wrong, I don't know why it might be, but we've got probably a 10. So 1052. The point about that is that if that's good for Malcolm, then what we know is 1052's back on here should give us about the same sort of relief, which is adequate to play with. So I think, out of interest, what I want to find out is whether it works in the tightening department. I'm going to slack it off again in a minute, but just looking in principle, can I dial out, does the truss rod actually work to dial out the curvature? Let's say, for example, I refretted it and resurfaced it, and let's say it behaves slightly different afterwards. I don't know why, weird things happen, and I might need to still counteract the bend pulled by the strings. Or let's say Malcolm said he wanted 11s on there or something, so I need to know whether this truss rod works at all. It's probably not just enough to say, well, it falls into where I want it. That's convenient, but it's not exactly, sorry about this, it's convenient, but it's not exactly perfect. Okay, well, that's taken out any bend in that neck, so it does work, which is pretty good. And I'll just slack it off. Okay, well, that's good to ascertain. I didn't do that months ago, years ago, a year or more ago probably. When I did this, I had a Hondo 2 neck and body, and I went piling into setting this up as a AristoCat. And I didn't really check the neck thoroughly. I just assumed it would work, so I just gleefully went ahead and refretting, which is because I like refretting. I just piled into it, and obviously spent, you know, whatever, 2 days off and on refretting it, and the cost and the time and everything. And then when it came to rewire it and put it all together, the neck wouldn't do anything. It went into a sort of permanent little bit of back bow, and just it wouldn't respond to any adjustment. So I had to throw it away in the end. Ditched it, set fire to it, and called it quits. But so it was one of those things. You only do that once before you make really dead sure that before you even start off, you should check that basic thing. So on this, it's great, it works. Looking at the condition of this wonderful old fingerboard, the great thing about radiusing the fingerboard is that it makes it like brand new again. But at another level, the downside of doing it is that it takes away whatever that character might be, and sometimes it looks horrible and dirty, but actually there are other times on other guitars where that character is really, that's the only way to put it, is charismatic. You know, and I have to check with people and say, look, you know, do you really want it refreshed, looking brand new, or do you want it, you know, would you like to just go with the refret, get the nice new frets out of it and everything playing really well, new pickups, all the rest, but keep the original character of the fingerboard. And most people say they want the new look, which is kind of interesting because, well, I sort of understand it. We've got the chance, why not have it totally all refreshed? I suppose it's a bit like saying to people, you can afford plastic surgery now, would you like some or not? And most people, it seems to go, yeah, go on then. Well, if I can, I might as well, eh? So this one's proving a bit tricky. I was hoping to get these out in a way that I could possibly reuse them, but, well, it's at least as sacrificial strings, but you never know. It takes a bit of fiddling off camera to straighten these out to run any real chance of reusing them, because it's just impossible to reuse when you've got coils at the end of them. Okay, so here we've got, this is quite firmly stuck to the ground, the deck of the guitar, so possibly a little bit of loosening on these posts. Well, I say loosening on the post, that's basically spinning the whole post. It's no surprise really. They're never particularly strongly in place. Okay, I'm going to put this to one side and come back to it where I will take out the kinks in the strings and try and reuse them. I'll put them up as I put these back on the Avon when the time's right to reuse. No harm in that. So off comes the little old bridge, which I say is probably going to get ditched. I'll take off pretty much everything that moves, because we may replace everything. Now this one is spinning in its grave, so we're kind of more than likely going to pull the whole post out, and if we pull this one we can do it, no doubt, but what will come out with it is the earth wire. Again, no real surprise. I think one of these was broken in the past, so we need to be careful in our removal. Let's get a different bit of string. So yeah, we got a Columbus over here waiting to do. So we've got quite a bit of refretting and re-radiusing to do, and probably all in one go really. So it's quite good to do a whole stash at the same time. Sort of makes it easier. Now these are quite potentially quite flimsy, so I'm going to see if Chris Barker's little homemade tool that he made for me will come in handy at this point. Trying to just lever this thing up and off in some way that's not really going to damage it. Quite difficult. We're obviously just careful not to press too much on the finish. I don't really mind about the state of the pots underneath because they're going to go in the bin. And this is definitely about, let's try and prise these things off. Blimey. I don't know if these have been glued on at some point. Probably doesn't help that the underlying pots are loose. Something that just bumps that up a bit, maybe. No, like I said, it really doesn't help that these things are rolling about. Double the thickness of this up. Yeah, like I say, it doesn't help that the underlying pot is also a bit loose. I've got a horrible feeling that's been glued in the past. onto there. Let's see if I can tighten this thing up. Chris's little tool, by the way, is a superb little innovation. He's cut a little spannery bit into there to allow you to tighten up. I don't need to use that normally because I use a different method, but this thing is practically glued on, man. Now what am I going to do? What have I got? It's going to be thick enough to pull this out. And if it is glued, it's just going to break. Yeah, something's sticking it on. Oh well, we're going. If we can just get them up in the air a bit, get the string under them. That's cracked anyway, but I'm just thinking where we can lift this one and leave us room to at least super glue that other bit later on. Yay! Yay. It's not bad, this bit of string. Thank you. Okay, put these off to one side. Thank you, Chris, for that helpful tool. Thank you, rope makers. Okay, so this one will come out. That one will be attached to a, what's the word I'm looking for? What I'm looking for is that will be attached to an earth wire that goes through to the top of one of the pots. This one seems to just want to spin, and there's no real way of getting that. I'll try one thing, and if it doesn't work, then I'll maybe just live with it the way it is. The famous old temporary finish protector. I think it was was it CJC Guitars was saying on YouTube that he thanked me for thanked me for a 5-hour video that I did of Russ's Telecaster, because he was able to go to sleep and then wake up and it was still going. So I think if I did all of this in, he's glued in place, I'm afraid. No, it's not going to do. It's either going to come out in one piece or we're not going to take it out at all. Yes, so if I were to do this one in real time, then I think this might actually end up being longer than 5 hours. But there we go. So, question is, can I pull this thing on its own? The thing is spinning. The problem I got here is that I really don't want a post that's locked or glued or soldered or whatever it is into its bushing, because there's no movement. I can't do any bridge height adjustments. So I think it's more important that that comes out. The question is getting the leverage under it. This is a very flimsy top, and I don't want to be putting any. Sometimes you can lever these things out if you've got a wooden top and you can put a flat protector on it. But with this formed curved top, it's a lot less easy. So I may maybe come back to that. But we do have, at least we've got sort of movement in here, and we keep spinning it and pushing it. We'll get a bit of wiggle room, and then ultimately we can probably wiggle it enough to get it out. It's been able to. What do they used to say? Purchase. Get some purchase on it. I mean, the good old-fashioned way is just to grab it in this direction and wiggle and pull, and it's coming. So it's like a dentist pulling a tooth. A tooth. Come on, won't you come? Holy moly! As you can see, it's coming out. It's almost like it gets, and it's gone back in. Well done. We'll get there. Wiggle, 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 wiggle. Wiggle, come on. Come on. Caramba. This thing is, it seems like it's got thicker towards the end, which is totally impossible knowing the construction of these things. Yeah, what it seems to have is a load of glue at the bottom. Plug of glue or something, but we'll get there. The question is, can we also get the other one out? Wiggle. Well, it is definitely like pulling teeth. Don't mind chucking that whole thing in the bin. Now I won't pull this one just yet because we've got to get the we'll undo the earth thing at the same time. We will take out the switch parts, rhythm and treble, sheet, plate, marker, guide. Take the switch out. Okay, well these are all gonna, this is fun, these are all gonna just come out, so let's hike them out and cut the wires because none of this is going to be original by the time we've finished. Great, that one's stripped already. So there's a couple of them, so that may have to, that one's spinning in its spot. That one's moving, but I'm not sure if it really wants to come out at all. Probably will if we lift it at the same time. Get a bit of plastic under there, that will do. Yay! Same with this one. Come on, up you come. Yay! Right, well that's some of it. But this little fella here is the good thing about what to call it, that stuff, laminate by the way, is that it won't take long to just strip this out. You could just pull it out basically. I don't want to do that, so I'm just trying to persuade it to come out peacefully. Any movement at all on this as we're just going around. I know it's going. Come on, out you come. The downward force trick is always a good one. Saves the day. I mean, costs you usually in screwdriver bits, and that's the annoying thing. Is when you, it's a sort of dual thing. Is when you've got a screw head that's stripped, it kind of tends to reciprocally strip off your screwdriver head as well. So it's a bit of a lose-lose situation by the time you've got it out. Occasionally with something like this I would end up having to get the Dremel and cut a straight slot across the top of what remains of the screw head. There we go. Get rid of these. Well, I'll chuck them later on. But so here's our, it looks vaguely wax potted possibly, that's an innovation, but I think it's fresh air under here. And I won't cut it from this end, I'll cut it from, oh, sorry, I'll cut it from t'other end. Dangle that for a minute. Let's go in there and snip off all of these things. do everything anyway in the end, so all these little earth wires, bare earth wires going across from pot to pot. It's quite cute. What's this little green one down here? Okay, that's twisted around. The thing with old guitars, it's so often that the pots have spun round at least once in their lives, and with that you obviously get a weakened contact. You quite often end up breaking the solder. It doesn't take long at all. Okay, out you come. Ooh, the shards of all the bits of ply falling about. But this is cool. We'll get all of this inside shielded as well, and it'll look. I mean, not necessary. Some people say not necessary with a humbucker. However, some schools of thought say that actually it does serve some purpose, because there are those who say the whole purpose of shielding isn't specifically or strictly to do with, what do they call it, 50 cycle hum and single coil pickups, to which apparently they are prone to, but shielding won't apparently help them with that. What the shielding does, I'm told, and I tend to, as a logical argument, to me that seems actually to make sense. Apparently the shielding is a general thing to shield against radio frequency interference, which I think sounds a lot more credible, and so by that reckoning, shielding on a guitar circuit is a thing you just should do anyway, or if you want to prevent any possible radio frequency interference, then it doesn't really matter whether it's humbucker or single coil, you shield. And it sounds good to me, and I think it's very pretty anyway, so I like to do it. But like most things I do, the argument seems to make good sense, until somebody says to me, no, here is the paper, the physics paper, that proves that shielding has no effect on a guitar with humbuckers whatsoever. It's got nothing to do with radio frequencies. Then I'll carry on doing it. But like good science, I guess, always ready to be proved wrong by a counter argument, but one with empirical or credible evidence attached to it. And that doesn't mean one where somebody shouts a lot about it. Okay, so we're into the sort of stripping out territory now. I'm just going to take off the jack plug plate, pull that out, and then we'll take off the strap buttons. Once that's done, we'll have the neck off, and we'll get the soldering iron warmed up, and we'll pull those beautiful frets. And I like doing that because it's fun, and that's one thing. And second thing, not only is it fun, but it also sort of puts you on a trajectory of no return. Once you've pulled the frets. Was that a big flathead screw? Okay. Yeah, once you've pulled the frets out, you are on the way. There's no turning back, caught in a trap. I've got tuners to take off yet as well. So this is going backwards to Philip's head. By the time you take bits off a plywood guitar like this, it starts to feel really, really light. There's not much to it, but we know that, so let's not make out we're surprised. Okay, so still, sorry about this, but this is going to happen next. Watch this. Sorry, watch this. Goodbye. You are the weakest link. Goodbye. Flip this upper side to downer. Malcolm's done a nice satin finish on the back here with a bit of sandpaper. He's done that on a couple of his guitars, but it's you can see it really makes it nice to play as opposed to the slightly stickier gloss finish, and I might look to do that on a couple of mine that are hanging up there waiting to be done. I've got a neck that I also sprayed not so long back, and I've got to gloss finish that as well, and then it would be technically a good candidate. Bits of black paint coming off, as you'd expect. It would be a good candidate for the silky treatment. So these are standard little upgraded or replaced post-dated tuner screws that come with these Clouthon Deluxe. I mean, Clouthon Deluxe, nice quality tuners, and no doubt about that. We'll see if they, you know, if they suit the style, then we can go with it. Let's have a look and see how the new pickups. I mean, originally we were talking about going with white, sort of ivory-ish things to kind of reflect. God, there's all bits of lacquer coming off because there's so many holes. I don't think how well you can see that, but so many holes in there. We'll kind of fill some of that, ready for whatever we do next, even if it's putting these back on. Yeah, so we were talking about originally ivory sort of coloured, cream coloured tuners, which sort of suits the other fittings, and because we were talking about active IronGear pickups, which were pretty mean looking stealth black things, so we were kind of going all out on the black and cream. But having said that, now we've got chrome IronGears because they were out of, look at these bits, oh, they come off, all of you. They were out of stock, so we went with the chrome humbuckers that they had in stock, non-active ones. So it may be that this chrome actually does fit the bill now better than going off onto the whatchamacallit, cream front. So now we have a situation where I want to just gently tap out these fellas here. I'm just going to lightly prop the neck. It doesn't, the headstock, it's not a massive amount of force, but it's just enough to poke out these whatchamacallits, and actually I'll just move in as I do it, so there's support close under the thing. It just means we can clean up around it, and if necessary replace them with a different model or whatever we choose to do. Okay, so all the force, if you like, is going straight into this block. It's not bending the neck. Okay, so while we've got it down, upside down, let's flip to the big screw head fitting thing, and let's take off our friend the neck. Now, ooh, the sound of shaggy plywood creaking. Some people get very nervous about, you know, how weak these joints get over time, and providing the neck heel, providing the neck heel is in good condition, good shape, then it shouldn't be a problem to refit this a few times. And there's nothing so far that makes me feel like this is not a good, you know, a good safe joint. On a guitar over there, I think the Hondo 2, where I put a different neck on it now, and I've done that with threaded inserts, and the reason I've done that is because the neck heel on the replacement neck, the Hohner Arbor Professional blah 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 Les Paul style neck, it was shot to pieces, and there really wasn't much wood left amongst the toothpicks and stuff like that. So, okay, here we go. We've got a little shim or two under there. It's like a dusty paradise or something. It's just so much flaky shit. Okay, that looked like a bit of sticky tape, but it isn't. It's just where the plastic shim has been pressing against there. So, for the geometry of this thing, that, I don't know how it's fixed. No, it's not fixed. Okay. Well, we saw where it was. I'm going to draw around it. I sort of tend to do. Sometimes it'll stay put, and sometimes I can draw around it before it falls off, and sometimes I can draw around it and then I can glue it and it will stay put still, but just in case anyway, I like to mark it. In case it drops off later in the day, and might as well go with where it wants to be. So somewhere out here we've got Showbrit blue. Let's have a go at sticking it down right now so we don't lose it later on. No point doing anything else. If we've got it so it's already balanced nicely, then we might as well continue to use what's there. So I'm just going to put a bit of stick, unless of course we find that it needs something else, in which case I'll scrape this one off and we'll do it again. In the meantime, let's just sort of scrunch that into place, and since we finished for the time being with the body, I'll just push it off nicely to one side. Not sure how well this super glue does with this thing. Okay, I'm just going to place it under there safely for a minute while we sort of just examine the neck. So this, again, it's funny, these things, I look at this and I go, that doesn't look like maple to me. I think this is a mahogany style neck, whatever the Japanese equivalent was. I don't know that much about wood, okay, so I'm just guessing, but it has a different feel. That doesn't feel like hard maple at all. You can probably see it's a sort of reddy, it's much more grainy, fibrous, yeah, more fibrous and less dense and hard than blah 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 maple. So I think it just makes me think, okay, what do we need to do? You know, will the screws go back in here comfortably? Do we need to think, is it worth thinking about threading it? And if I show you, yeah, let me I'll show you what I did with this Hona arbor, which is currently waiting for a layer of, well, a quick bit of a sand back on here, and then a layer of gloss, because this was a bit of a state. But anyway, this is a refretted neck waiting to be put back into action, but you can see it had loads of thousands of fills and drills and whatever, so I sank some really chunky inserts into it, and actually what it means is that this neck attaches in a bit of an unorthodox way that you don't necessarily, you don't normally see on a Les Paul copy, for example, but it does that, and so it's done. It's hardly any deal, but it's done up with these Allen bolts, and they go into this these inserts really easily. So maybe worth doing. It changes obviously the look. It's not you know, the same exact original finish, but then basically none of this will be by the time we finish with it. So I don't think we're into this for kind of traditional, you know, untouched showroom concourse condition. This is blinging these things up to make them play well. Okay, so I'm gonna sort of think about this. I'm sure this would do back up. I'm sure it's not 100% necessary, but let's think about it as we go. Front of the headstock is okay. There's a bit of paint missing there, but we can touch that up. The nut slot is okay. Back of that is a bit chipped off, and again you can see it is a mahogany style wood. It's definitely not maple, not as we would understand it, and you can see it there. So, you know, overall the neck isn't too bad. That will cover up with tuners anyway, but I'd like to clean it up. Nothing there that makes me think it won't work. To put a Morris on here, it'd be interesting because we may need to just cover this so it doesn't get glooped up with lacquer, but it's possible because we can cut round this since it stands out, and we can still get a good lacquer on this part when we come to do it. So first things first, I do need some containers because I'm going to use this one. This is just spare parts so I can pile up over there. This is not oak caster hardware now. This is, yeah, you can feel the weight of these things. I would prize one apart, but there's no real need. But they're not worth keeping. Obviously the tuners are, they're good quality. But I'm just going to shove all of these components into here, and then we sort of pull them back out as and when we need them. So everything goes in, so we don't lose anything. A few more things to order. We've got obviously the pickups, the refret is the next bit, or the neck re-radiusing, and then the refret. Well, that's good. Everything fits in there. What I'm going to do now is I'm just going to just lightly clamp this down, and we're going to get the soldering iron out, or as some people call it in America, the soldering iron. And then we're going to pull these little bad teeth out. Now the question is, just got to get this supported, but I don't want to lift it up any more than it already is. Just support. There we go. It's only to hold it in place. I'm not doing any major structural thing on it. No, I don't like that. It's sitting it up too high. Try one of these. Just keep it in place, if that's all right. Would you just stay there? Alternatively, I don't want to put pressure on the old Gibson neck. Actually, you know what, that isn't too bad. Hardly any pressure. Right, so there's the bits. We'll do a proper labelling thing. Let's do it before I take it off there. Avon Aristo. We've got nice white Morris AristoCat logos to go on there as well. Okay, even Aristo can go down here. There's a few containers. It's quite sad that the whole of the guts of a guitar like this fits neatly into a single ice cream tub. That doesn't mean that I eat loads of ice cream exactly, but whenever we do have some, I make sure we keep the tubs because it's very handy. Okay, so what I need for the next bit is my fret poulards. This is a very enjoyable part of the process. But like I say, it's the bit that really commits you to, you're on your way, there's no turning back. Cue the music. And while that's happening, I'll just tidy up these bits so we still have them for another time. I bought an extra set of these little smallest ones because for some reason they go walkies. So having about 5 or 6 spares is very, very useful. Okay, I've got 4 little gold screws over here that belong to an oak caster which is in the house. And that oak caster is waiting for a day when there's less humidity. And I'm treading on a very spongy soldering pad. Just stick in there in case I need to clean this off. Alright, so pulling the frets. So right, just a couple of things that I've come across in my time. If you're doing a fender from before a certain date, which I am later on this week, then you actually have to drive out the frets sideways. So they say. I don't actually, I'm not sure it really makes much difference. Once you've driven them out, quote unquote, then you're still going to press new ones in down. So The only thing I can think of is if you pull them out, it may be that you create too big a slot. But anyway, with a guitar like this, I can just pull this, pull these out starting at one corner, and to do that, it helps to have some have these special fret pulling pliers and a soldering iron to heat up the fret just slightly. Now, just a quick look. This is actually a tighter radius than 12, so it's closer to 9.5. It could even be a little bit tighter than that. Now the question is, or the point here is, it may not have intended to be tighter, it may have become that way over time, but actually the closest we've got in radius, which is quite strange for a Les Paul, unusual for a Les Paul, is a lot of this is close to 7.25. Not exactly, and there's a bit of fresh air down there, so it's down this end, it's close to 9. We'll go with 9.5 to retain some of the feel of it, but that 9.5, well, it's quite accurate at this end. However, the kind of the playing edge up here, where somebody's finger plays more often, I suppose, is actually rolled a little bit, and I think that'll be through wear rather than through deliberate. So if we re-radius this to 9.5, which I'm going to write on the board, if we re-radius or tidy it up to 9.5, back to 9.5, which is where most of it is, then we'll find ourselves taking it down a fair bit to bottom this curve out. But given there are some pretty deep scratches and whatnot, probably isn't a bad thing. But there you go, 9.5, not 12 that you sort of might expect. Okay, so the hard bit, whether it's one-handed or two-handed, let's just see if I can push this down a bit. The hard bit here, I find, is getting the first bite on the edge of the frets. And actually, it's always the way that you can't really see very well, but it's often the case that you can't get this first bite without slightly compressing the edge of the fingerboard. Sometimes you can, sometimes it does compress it. So I'm just having a feel, without doing the thing with the soldering iron, I'm going to run down here and make that first bite. Some of them, when you've got almost no metal at all, it doesn't want to go, and you have to be very, very insistent. Now these frets have obviously been in this guitar for 50 odd years, and they don't necessarily just want to pop out without pulling up some flakes of rosewood with them, and I can see it definitely wanting to do that. The reason I'm doing this without heating it to get the first bite is because it's almost impossible to get that much control that you need to start lifting the fret whilst holding the soldering iron. So I would rather get my start point down here just up and on the way, and then come back and use the soldering iron to warm everything up for the rest of the journey. Now down this end they're much easier to lift because there's more material, they're not worn quite so much, but it really is trying to clearly trying to lift up quite a bit of material off the fret here. Now there is there are some little things, fret sort of protectors you can use. I've tried them a few times, I'll try them again now, and I've not actually had that much success with them. So the idea is, well, first of all, you can't get them in at this end. There's a little, the idea is you're supposed to slide them under the fret and help to keep down the, keep the wood from flicking off, right? So let's say we can get it in just to begin with, before we haven't got the fret rising yet enough to get this under the tang, but let's have it holding there until we do, and then let's start the process of warming. Now I've got a pretty chunky soldering iron tip at the moment, so it's going to heat pretty quickly, so I'm going to be ready with, first of all, get some heat in there. The grim part is that it will boil the finger oil. Right, so as it warms up, I'm just going to start moving, and then I'm going to push this thing under, and now I'm going to hopefully follow along, still keeping it heated, push. Need an extra hand really, you can see. Now the question here is, yes, it's protecting the fingerboard from the blunt edge of this, which never is a real problem. The problem is how much rosewood this thing wants to pull up with the tang of the fret. Now I'm doing everything I can at this point to minimise that, and we'll see in a minute if it's actually done any good. If you're just refretting, that's not too bad actually. It's probably is worth doing. If you're just refretting, you're pulling the frets and you're going to put a new set in, then doing this is definitely worthwhile, because you're going to help to preserve this material. If you're re-radiusing with a sanding block or radius block as well as refretting, which I'm going to do anyway, you do have a bit more leeway because you're obviously going to resurface the fret. So any of those chips, the thinner, more superficial ones, you're going to sort of flatten off again anyway. But having said that, the re-radiusing process it takes a hell of a long time to get to the bottom of even some of the most minor looking chips. You know, when a chip comes out attached to the tang of the fret, it might be, let's say, 1/10 of a millimetre deep, and actually that 1/10 of a millimetre takes a long time to get down to if you're doing the whole fingerboard. So, you know, when your mind says, oh, you know, I don't need to be that careful because I can go over this again and resurface it, just be weird birds. See, there's some pulled up there, so that will be mostly covered by a new fret, but you know, that would take a long time to literally file sand down to the bottom. So you know, it is always a good idea to do as much as you can to release the frets without any pull-up. But you know, as I said, getting the first thing started, getting the fret starting to pull is the hard bit, and it's also, you can't get this plate under here quick enough. We've got heat coming out here, we have. Yeah, you can't get it under for the very first 5 millimeters really when you're starting to move the fret. You can only sort of follow along like I'm doing now. But you know, as a rule, the less you can pull out and have to fill or sand down to iron out, the better. I can see this protector here has dragged some rosewood along with it, which means some stuff came up right at the beginning, and we can see it. Same sort of thing. Interesting. I'll do one now without using the protector, and I just want to see if it actually looks any different. So this time, I'm just going to warm the whole thing like before, and I'm just going to just bite with the things and press down, in a way doing its own version of holding the rosewood down. To be honest, I don't think it will be that much different. So it's one of those things, you know, you talk to some people and they go, oh, you cannot do it without one of those protectors. There you go, that's as good as the first one. Let's try another one. In fact, 2 that I did with protectors cost me some material right at the beginning. That's partly because the first bite to get the fret moving is the hardest. If you, by the way, if you're radiusing the fingerboard, one thing that is good for is if you slip with your soldering iron, which is easier when you've got a thin tip actually. But if you do slip with a soldering iron, then re-radiusing the board is a good way to remove any slightly melted bits of rosewood. See, that's not bad at all. In this case, it's probably just as easy to go along here without that. And also, because you have to kind of using these little strips, they have downsides, right? Because you have to try and pull the thing up enough to shove the strip underneath there. it tends to pull out, the front of the strip seems to pull out some of the material right at the beginning. Doing it where I'm just pressing straight down from the start instead of going sideways seems to be, in this case, being a little bit more efficacious at protecting the rosewood. I can see where the tang's trying to lift material, and I'm sort of pressing down, so the downward press of the pliers counteracts the upward pull of the jaws closing. So maybe, you know, you do it a few times and you'll see what works for you, but I'm going to continue this way. It's pretty good. But I thought I'd show you the options. So now you can see this is a bound fingerboard. So when I cut a set of frets for this, I'm going to cut them with an overhang so that I can put them back in, and we keep that nice cream binding and it keeps its original look. And I've got a little tool for creating that, the little undercut on the tang that you need. It's pretty easy. Well, it's not actually, it's not pretty easy. It's a little technique you have to, if you take too much you'll mangle it, if you take too little you have to take several bites at it. But it's like all of these things, including, and especially if you like fret leveling, it's just a matter of practice and experience. So you can see that we are committed without doubt. There's no turning back on this job. We are going to have a nicely refretted Avon neck at some point. Now that's trying to pull up some flakes there. And the problem is if I press them down, they're already kind of pulled. So the truth is that the minute you can see them pulling, they're pulled. And they're going to come out in, more than likely to come out when you're sanding anyway. I think the process of using these flat ended but very sharp fret puller pliers is probably all you need, because you're pushing down while you're pulling up, and same movements. It's pretty effective. Now this one, I think I missed this, and it's not actually started lifting. So where it has crimped the end to get that first bite, that's where the re-radiusing process will help to smooth it back off. Now what I'm not sure about is how well these inlays are going to stand up to being sanded. I don't know how thick they are to begin with, and I also don't know how loose they are. They appear to have shrunk over time, so I may well need to just glue them back in as we go. Probably, ideally, before we go into sanding, so that we sand the glue, any of the sort of surrounding glue as well. Great fun. So once we've taken these out, we just have to be, we need to clean out the slots to make sure there's no obstructions. Then we need to cut a set of frets, and if we're going to radius to 9.5, then I'm going to bend the fret wire to like 8 or something, so it's just a little tighter than the 9.5, so it'll kind of grip the neck rather than sort of I don't want the end sticking up. That's the worst possible thing. Some guitars I have to tolerate the end sticking up. Some of the very old guitars where the fingerboard is so rolled that if you tried to re-radius it to a consistent radius all the way across, you'd be in danger of taking too much material away. So sometimes you have to let the frets sit at the correct radius and let there be a sort of a kind of a bit that looks like it's standing up at the edges. It only looks like it's standing up because in fact the fingerboard is falling away. Sometimes you have to kind of live with that, because what you know is that your fretboard is completely accurate to the right radius. It's just that your fingerboard isn't. And as with all of these things, it's a judgment call about how much you take away to try and grind it down to an absolute perfect radius. If you don't technically need it, and you can make the guitar play really well without taking 20 years of life off the fingerboard, then maybe that's a better call. Even if you have to leave the fret edges apparently standing a little proud, but firmly in, that may be a better option for the guitar than carrying on and sanding away until you've got an absolutely sort of scientifically precise radius. Because to be honest, the fingers don't care much as long as their frets are level and they are at a certain consistent radius. That's what your fingers care about. The thing you lose, by the way, on a guitar like this with such worn frets, when the frets get worn, obviously the string, when it's being fretted, sits much closer to the fingerboard than when the frets are newer and taller. And the consequence of the strings coming closer to the fingerboard on an old guitar is that less of your finger, the pad of your finger, less of that ends up below the level of the string, which is really necessary to help you push the string sideways. So with tall new frets, your finger, flesh of your finger a lot of it sits under the string and is instrumental in you bending strings. Basically, it allows you to push sideways. As soon as the frets wear down like these have done in the centre, your fingers are more likely to skip over the top when you try to bend, because there's nothing. Most of your finger is above the string when you're pushing, and that then is far more likely that the finger kind of skips over the top of the string rather than pushes it. That's much more important, by the way, for bending than this whole thing about string action. The overall playing action. Some people believe that you must have a high action so you can get your fingers behind strings to bend them. It's not to do with the height of the string, because in fact it cancels out. When you press a string down, it's down at the height of the fret again, so it doesn't really make that much difference. But the real bit is how much distance between the string when fretted and the fingerboard. That's the critical distance as far as ease of bending is concerned, and that has to do with fret life and fret wear. It's probably, and I can't say for sure because I haven't played one, but I would wager that is a very strong part of the rationale behind scalloping fingerboards. The only reason why anyone would want to do that. Gives them massive sort of string bend potential. Now this last fret is pulling up a bit right on the edge, but we're almost there. There you go. Okay, switch that off because we're done. Find out where it plugs in. Okay, so neck defretted, ready now to sand and resurface. You can feel it's rough. It's got mostly it's rough because it's got loads of gunge where the frets met the fingerboard from 50 years of playing. But now we can prepare a radius block with some sandpaper on it, and we can get ready to sand that back to a 9.5 radius. It'll take quite a bit of work actually, and at the same time cut a set of frets, medium gauge frets, to slightly less than the 9.5 radius. Okay, so I'm not going to go through that stuff on camera because it's just, I might show you a bit of the re-radiusing, how it looks, but I'm going to stop for a minute and I'll come back in a while. So now the world is getting a little bit covered in rosewood dust. But I'm doing 2 necks at once. This one, the Columbus one, is pretty much done. Look how nice that looks as a refinished or retreated neck. It's chunkier neck than this Avon, a little bit chunkier anyway. But the Avon's taking more work, and I'm doing the Avon at the 9.5. It's taking more work to get right down to the bottom of these kind of gouges and spots of wear, which is kind of what you expect when something's very old. I'm using quite powerful sandpaper, if you like. It's 80 grit. Kind of no apologies here. I'm just going to blow this dust out the door. Yeah, 80 grit, so it's quite brutal. But I can see at the moment pretty much got everything resurfaced right down to one tiny little spot here. I don't know if you can see it reflecting. That's the only spot, and that's, I don't know if that's somewhere where it's been dented or dropped or dinged or something, but we're almost there anyway. So a little bit more work with this and we'll stop. The nice thing about this, even 80 grit, it feels like I used to go on and sand with lighter and lighter grades of sandpaper, but actually I quite like the rough, not roughness exactly, but it's not polishedy smooth, it's quite nice, and then the frets on top of that look really great. And in fact, I think it's pretty much how this thing looks. Just looks like a brand new neck, and it will over the years. Obviously, it'll kind of shine up with play, but it starts off. I think this is. I guess what I'm saying is I tend not to want to go finer and finer paper after this point. Quite challenging to get this even all the way through, but not impossible. It's also brightened up the mother of pearly stuff, the inlays as well. It hasn't made them any bigger, but it's brightened them a bit. Shooting out all the dust. This is great, these compressed air cans. Obviously I've got to vacuum up this stuff as well because it's a bit mucky, but okay, so more or less the tiniest smidgen hint of a bit there, and I'll carry on one tiny bit more, but we're almost done, and that's pretty good. Pretty good. A little tiny bit more then, and be ready to cut some frets. I've got frets. No, hang on. I'm going to cut frets for this one. I've got frets for the Avon already. In fact, they're a jumbo frets, so I'm just going to double check our spec to make sure that's alright. And I think they make pretty nice frets for a Les Paul neck, but we shall see. I know that Malcolm's got them on his rallies. Okay, so that's the refinishing done. Isn't it beautiful? Look at that. Now it is a little bit on the sharp side right at the edge, so I tend to get a bit of, again this is 220, so it's quite rough. I'm just going to slightly round off mainly the plastic on the binding, just so it takes the sharp edge. Re-radiusing can be very, very, you can put a knife edge on this. I feel quite uncomfortable. So a little bit of softening off goes a long way. Lovely. Nice. I like how that feels. And you can see once you've blown out all the dust, you can see some of the places where little chips have come up, but actually none of them are particularly bad. By the time we've got these beautiful chunky frets in there. Yum yum yum. That'll be good. Okay, so they're just off to one side. I do need to cut some frets for this Columbus, which isn't really part of this Malcolm's Avon story, but it's nice anyway. And that was, I did that at 12. This is a 12 radius, whereas the Malcolm's is done at a 9, sort of more vintagey almost. Great thick headstock as well. Right, let's hang this one back up out. Oh no, actually I'll do this, but I'll do this off camera. So I'll come back shortly when I'm ready then to clamp these in, and do that a little bit later on. Okay, so see you in a bit. Right, there we are, look. 2 beautiful necks ready to go on the fret press. I haven't got that set up yet, but we'll do in a minute, and everything is ready. Just need to get some water and some towels and whatever I usually use to make it easier. But yeah, shouldn't be a problem. Straight in, fret, clamp, leave it, clamp for a couple of hours, come back, clamp some more. I could do with a few more radius blocks to do a couple of necks at once, because I don't like being slowed down by just doing one at a time. But yeah, actually it's quite a good idea. Get some more of these and some more clamps really. Speed things up quite a bit. Okay, so as you can see, it's looking great. Frets all lined up, ready to go. Press those in, clamp them down in 2 blocks with 1 left over, and then leave them over probably till tomorrow to tailor them off and do all the beveling and cutting back and stuff. So see you in a minute. So here we are, going to do the first run of new frets on Malcolm's Avon, and I've got all my bits and bobs standing by ready. What I'll do is I will line up some of these things out of the way. Now this is tricky in that I can only do it in 2 chunks, so I can only do it in as much as I can reach with 1 block plus 1 extra bit here. I'll show you how that works in a minute. But anyway, so that's all I can do. So I've got them all lined up there. So I'm just going to put these things down here in order, and the other ones in order for later. So now I'm going to go squirt and shove glue into all these places. Now because I'm able to do this on the press and it's more straightforward, I can afford to do a load in one go. I don't remember how many I'm trying to do here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8. And loads of goo everywhere. Don't worry about that. So chunk that off to one side. First thing I want to do is I want to get my, I'm doing 9.5s here, so I want to do a 7.25 as my first press, and then go back and do 9.25 as my second one. So I'm just going to put the 7.25 in, sorry, 9.5 to 7.25. Put the 7.25 in first, and I'm just going to make sure then, first of all, there's glue in all of these here slots, just to make sure it's got some in there. Now when I do this, I always have standing by my tub of warm water. It's a bit like one of those cowboy films when somebody's about to have a baby. You have your towels and your warm water ready, because first of all I'm going to whiz across and take off the excess. So that goes onto the paper towel, and I'm going to quickly whiz all that excess off. Now as you can see, it leaves a thin layer of glue behind and some in the slot, which is what we want. What we don't want is that thin layer of glue to dry. So next out comes the wet towel, or tea towel in this case, and I just basically wet up the remaining parts of the frets, avoiding the slots themselves. I don't want to kind of pull any glue out of there. I'm just wetting everything else up so that the glue that's spilled onto the surface isn't drying yet. Then I can now position my frets back in place and take them over, once that's done, to the press for the first press down. And the big smack down to begin with is the 7.25, which is a tighter radius than the 9.5. So I'm going to go tighter first and then a final press down with the correct radius, or the more correct radius. Okay, so again, everything's still wet, the fingerboard's still wet. I don't know how well you can see, but I can easily now go across to my cork cool pressing thing. For some reason this isn't as big as I want it, and more clamping power. So we can just gently line up where I need to be and then get into place, press down. Doesn't have to be massively hard, I'm just pushing these things in firmly but into place and squelching glue out the sides, which is what I want. So I'm going to go in with the wet towel and clean that up as well. And so it's just a matter of getting this through and lining it up. And when you get to a certain point you have to sort of move around a bit because you sort of in danger of running out of space, not being able to squish down without this thing falling through the hole underneath. Okay, so that's the first to squelch and everything's in place, and you can see that quite easily that there's glue splurging everywhere. So again, out comes the wet towel, off comes the excess, keeping everything from drying while we're doing it. And then the next run is the correct radius squelch, and again that will produce a bit of runoff, which we can again pick up with the towel. So having this towel standing by is always very good. And this time I'm going to change out and go for the 9.5. Okay. Sometimes I half think of putting a board across here, which I never really do, but it probably makes a bit of sense to do that, because otherwise it runs a risk of falling into this little gap. But there may not be enough room under there. Yeah, there is. Nah, but the downside is that lifts the headstock. So we could do something like that, and then it tips over, which gets a bit annoying. So maybe, good idea, maybe a modified one at a later date would work, but right now, nope. Okay, so we're going to now just squish with the 9.5, the correct radius. So again, this is another fairly hard press down. I don't want to break the neck or run any risks of cracking it, but just making sure everything is properly in place and any excess glue is squeezed out. If I was doing this with super glue, occasionally I have to do one odd fret here and there with super glue. I would be using this rubber bungee to hold the thing in place. Now this is a bit tricky. I need that not to fall in the hole. Okay, so there's all my frets pressed in, and again, before I clamp these I want to take the excess away. I don't want that drying and messing up the fingerboard. This time I can sort of run down the sides of the frets. Again, anything on top of the fret's fine because it will come off when we do fret leveling anyway. Yeah, so the slowdown here is now when I clamp these for an hour or two, I have to go off and do something else because I can't do the other set of frets. The clamping is probably an excessive, possibly. I use wood glue for frets, so with something like super glue, clamping isn't really required because it's done within 30 seconds. It's either done or it isn't. But with wood glue, it takes longer to set, and to give it the best chance of a glorious future as possible, then it really does make sense to leave it some time to set. Now I'm clamping at this point, just making sure it fits nicely, clamping all but one which won't fit within that clamping or that neck caul. So everything else fits. The first 7 fit in, but the 8th can't fit. I hate this when this happens. Stay. I don't know why it's rolled off sideways. Let's try that again. It can be quite difficult to get it to sit exactly where you want it. There's a tendency to roll off. Right, so I've got to clamp this in such a way that I leave as much room as possible just to the outside of my last fret and that line. So I need to leave this one exposed because I'm going to clamp that with a separate clamp and block or caul. Okay, so a bit of luck, I might get this one on. Still going a bit sideways, but I think it will do. Okay, now there's a nicely clamped, and they're sort of lean them against there. Now here's the fun one. Take out that's clamping with a 9.5 block. So what I can do now is I can take out this 9.5 thingy insert, and I can put it in this thing here, which is my kind of makeshift caul. Is it called a caul? Caul. Then I can get myself one of these things with a bit of thing to it. Put it on there, and sneak in using the power of the might of Velcro, and possibly, don't normally do it this way, I normally do it in a kind of logical way where I can actually see it, and with a bit of luck, not this luck because I can't see very well, let's come from this side. Right, stay there, guitar. I'm going to come in from, stay. Come in from this side. I should really throw these little clamps away because they are a bit rubbish. Come in from this side, and I'm going to clamp down if I can even get there with these crappy little clamps. I can just clamp down on this one here. Check the other side, it's on. It's a little bit farther in this direction. Oh, that's about right. Okay, bit of a squeeze and a bit of goop coming out, and there we are. So that is our first rack done, and then I can do the next lot as another pile together. And I can leave this down out the way for an hour or so. Actually, I shouldn't really put it there because I've got other things to do with that bass guitar. But yeah, so that's my first rack of frets, and I can then push everything out of the way for the time being and come back to it at a later point. Okay, so I'll see you when we've done the next bit.